Every night, without fail, an old dog named Charlie would venture into the backyard. His once strong paws now trembled with age, but his eyes still sparkled with a purpose that no one could quite understand. The family often watched from their kitchen window, curious but hesitant to interrupt him. Why did he dig so fervently, night after night, as if searching for something he could never find? At first, it seemed like just an odd habit, but as the days passed, something in the air changed, a quiet tension filling the household. Emma, the little girl who had grown up with Charlie, noticed it first. She couldn't sleep, her thoughts filled with questions about the dog's strange behavior. "What is he looking for?" she whispered to her mother, her voice thick with worry. Her mother could only shake her head, unsure, but she knew that whatever it was, it meant something deeply important to Charlie. The family's love for the dog was unconditional, but there was something more, something that tied their hearts together in a way they couldn't explain. As Charlie dug deeper each night, it became clear. This was not just about a dog digging a hole. It was a journey, a quest for something buried far deeper than the earth in their backyard. As the nights wore on, Emma and her family would soon discover that what Charlie was searching for would change their lives forever, revealing a bond between them that no one could have anticipated. The answer was closer than they thought, and it would melt their hearts in ways they never imagined. Stay with us as we uncover the emotional journey of an old dog, his family, and a heartwarming discovery that will leave you forever changed. One chilly autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Charlie did something he had never done before. He wasn't just digging in the backyard, he was digging furiously, as if time was running out. Emma had just returned from school and noticed the frantic digging. She watched from the window, her heart racing. Something was wrong. This wasn't like Charlie at all. The old dog, who had always been so calm and steady, seemed desperate, his paws flinging dirt in all directions as he tore at the earth with newfound energy. Emma ran outside, her small feet crunching over the fallen leaves as she hurried to his side. "Charlie, what's wrong?" she asked, but he didn't stop. He just kept digging. His breathing was heavy, and his eyes were wide with an unfamiliar urgency. Suddenly, Charlie stopped. His head snapped up, ears alert, eyes wide with a mix of fear and anticipation. Emma froze, her heart pounding in her chest. It was as if the world had gone silent. She didn't know what had changed, but something was different. The ground beneath Charlie's paws shifted slightly, and in that instant, a soft whimper escaped from his throat. He had uncovered something. But it wasn't the usual bone or toy he had buried over the years. This was something bigger, something hidden deep beneath the earth. A faint, soft sound echoed from the hole. A quiet cry. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Could it be? Could there be something alive down there? Her eyes filled with a mix of confusion and fear. She called for her parents, and within moments, they were outside, joining her at the hole. Her father knelt beside Charlie, gently pulling at the dirt with his hands. As he dug deeper, the cry grew louder. They could now hear its small, helpless sound, desperate and weak. What had Charlie found? What was buried beneath the earth? This moment would set everything in motion, and the family had no idea that this discovery would challenge everything they knew about love, loyalty, and the bonds that hold us together. They could not turn back now. The story was just beginning. As her father carefully removed the last layer of soil, a small bundle of fur appeared, trembling in the cold night air. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she saw what Charlie had uncovered, a tiny, malnourished puppy. Its eyes were barely open, and its body was shivering uncontrollably. The little creature whimpered weakly, looking up at them with eyes that were full of fear and pain. For a moment, Emma could not breathe. How could this little puppy have ended up buried in the backyard? It was clear that it had been abandoned, left to fend for itself in the cold earth. Her father quickly wrapped it in his jacket and cradled it gently, while Charlie stood by, his eyes soft yet determined. But the family was not prepared for what came next. The puppy was in bad shape. It was so thin that its ribs were visible, and it seemed like it had been on its own for a long time. Emma's mother rushed inside to grab some warm blankets, while her father held the puppy close to his chest, whispering soft reassurances. Yet, despite their best efforts, the puppy remained limp, barely responding to the warmth and care they provided. Charlie, however, had not given up. He hovered close to the puppy, nudging it gently with his nose, as if urging it to fight. His old, tired body still held a spark of energy, his loyalty and protective instinct pushing him to do everything he could to help this tiny life. Emma noticed how Charlie seemed to soften, his usual gruff demeanor replaced by something deeper, something like understanding, as if he recognized the puppy's struggle. As the days passed, the puppy's condition worsened. It refused to eat, its body too weak to keep up with the simple act of survival. Emma stayed by its side, constantly comforting the small creature, but the truth was becoming harder to ignore. They weren't sure how much longer the puppy would last. The family began to lose hope, but Charlie refused to let them give up. One evening, as the family sat around the kitchen table, trying to figure out what more they could do, Charlie stood up suddenly, his ears pricked and his eyes full of purpose. Without warning, he trotted over to the living room, his steps slow but steady. Emma followed, confused. When she reached the doorway, she saw Charlie standing next to the small bed where the puppy had been resting. To her amazement, the puppy was no longer lying down. It was sitting up, its eyes a little brighter, and a weak wag of its tail greeted Charlie. Charlie leaned down and nuzzled the puppy gently, as if to say, "You're not alone anymore." Emma's heart swelled with emotion. Charlie, in his quiet, persistent way, had not only found this lost soul but had also helped it fight through the darkest moment of its life. The bond between the two was undeniable now. Charlie had not just rescued the puppy from the earth, he had shown it the most important thing of all, love. And in doing so, he had also brought the family closer together. Emma and her parents could see the change in the puppy's eyes, and they knew that their journey with this tiny creature was far from over. But as the days went by, the real challenge emerged. The puppy's past was still hidden, and its survival would require more than just love and warmth. The family would need to face the mystery of its origin, and the truth was something no one could have predicted. One evening, after weeks of nursing the little puppy back to health, Emma noticed something strange. The puppy had become increasingly attached to Charlie, following him everywhere he went, looking up at him with adoration in its eyes. Charlie, too, seemed to have taken on a new purpose in his old age. His once slow, cautious movements were now filled with energy, as if he had found new strength in this newfound companionship. But there was still something weighing on Emma's mind. Despite the puppy's recovery, there was an undeniable sadness in its eyes. It never truly relaxed, never fully seemed to be at peace. As much as the family tried to shower it with love, the puppy carried a burden that no one could understand. What had it gone through? Who had left it buried in the backyard? The answer came unexpectedly one late afternoon when Emma and Charlie ventured into the backyard together. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow across the yard. Emma knelt down next to the place where Charlie had first unearthed the puppy. She ran her fingers through the soil, remembering that fateful night. But today, something was different. The ground felt colder, harder, as though it were hiding something more. Charlie's ears perked up as he began to dig furiously, his paws moving with purpose. Emma watched, her heart pounding as she felt the tension rise. What was he looking for? Why was he digging so urgently? Was there something more to the puppy's past that they hadn't uncovered yet? The soil shifted, and suddenly, Charlie stopped. He froze, standing still with his nose hovering over the earth. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she approached him slowly, her heart racing. With a final nudge of his nose, Charlie uncovered what lay hidden beneath the dirt, a small, worn collar. Emma gasped, her hands trembling as she picked it up. The collar was old and tattered, but there was something familiar about it. It had a small tag with an inscription, one that Emma could barely make out. She wiped the dirt away, her hands shaking as she read the words engraved into the metal. Riley. It was the name of the puppy. The puppy was not a stray. It had belonged to someone. Someone who had loved it, someone who had been part of its life. But something had happened. Something had caused this little creature to be left behind, forgotten in the cold earth. Emma's heart shattered as the realization hit her. The puppy had not been abandoned out of cruelty. It had been lost. Its original family had somehow disappeared, leaving it behind with no one to care for it. Emma looked at Charlie, who stood quietly beside her, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. He had known. He had felt the pain in the puppy's heart. He had recognized its need for love, and in doing so, he had made it his mission to help heal the wounds of the past. The emotional weight of the moment pressed down on Emma. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked down at the puppy, now happily wagging its tail, finally at peace in Charlie's presence. It was as if all the pain, all the loneliness, had finally been washed away. In that moment, Emma understood the true depth of Charlie's love. He had not just saved a life, he had healed a broken soul. And in return, the puppy had given him a renewed purpose, reminding him of the power of unconditional love and the bond that can never be broken. The family, their hearts full, realized that this little puppy had brought them closer together, giving them a deeper understanding of what it meant to truly care for another. But as they all stood there, the air heavy with emotion, the truth was clear. Charlie's work was not finished. There was one more thing the family had to do. They had to find the puppy's original family, or at least the truth behind what had happened. The journey was far from over, and the search for closure had only just begun. But for the first time, they all felt a sense of peace. As Emma sat in the backyard, holding the worn collar in her hands, she could not stop thinking about everything that had happened. The once timid and sad puppy was now full of life, running and playing around with Charlie, its new best friend. But despite the puppy's newfound joy, Emma still felt a heavy weight on her heart. She had found the collar, the key to its painful past, but the questions still lingered. Charlie had brought the puppy into their lives, and together, they had given it a second chance. But Emma could not help wondering what had truly happened to the puppy's original family. What had caused them to disappear and leave the puppy behind? Was there something more that needed to be done? As the evening sky began to darken, Emma's mother, Sarah, came outside, noticing her daughter's deep thoughts. She sat beside Emma and gently wrapped an arm around her, feeling the weight of her concerns. Emma leaned into her mother, holding the collar tightly, the words still etched in her mind. "Mom, what do you think happened to the puppy's family?" Emma asked, her voice small but full of curiosity. Sarah, with a gentle sigh, thought for a moment. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said softly, "but I do know this: sometimes life changes in ways we cannot understand. Maybe they couldn't care for it anymore, maybe something happened, but it doesn't mean the puppy wasn't loved." She paused, brushing a hand through Emma's hair. "You and Charlie gave this little one the love it needed when no one else could. That's a beautiful thing." Emma nodded, her heart slowly beginning to feel a little lighter. She could see the truth in her mother's words. They had done all they could for the puppy, and it had found a new home, a family, with Charlie and Emma. As the puppy ran to Emma and nuzzled her, she smiled softly. In its eyes, she could see that the puppy was no longer lost, no longer sad. It had found its place in the world again, and Emma, with her caring heart, had been a part of its healing. "Maybe we will never know what happened to its family," Emma whispered, "but we gave it something more important: hope, love, and a second chance." With those words, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. The journey was not over, and the search for answers might continue, but one thing was certain: the puppy had found its home with them, and that was all that truly mattered now. As the days passed, Emma and Charlie's bond with the puppy grew stronger. The sadness that once filled its eyes had disappeared, replaced by a joyful spark. The puppy ran freely in the backyard, chasing Charlie with its little tail wagging happily. Emma watched with a warm smile, feeling a deep sense of peace. The puppy had found its place, a family that loved and cared for it. While the mystery of the puppy's past may never be solved, Emma realized something more important. The love they had given was far more valuable than any answer. In giving a puppy a second chance, they had healed not only it, but themselves as well. Their lives were now filled with purpose, love, and hope. As Emma hugged the puppy, she whispered, "You are home now." With that, the journey continued, reminding viewers that every life matters and the power of second chances. Join us in spreading hope and helping more animals find their forever homes. Subscribe and share.